when I was rewatching Blackmagic Craft, and I saw one of Jeremy's videos where he attempts to create a giant city build using kits from this very same company. Jeremy's build was cut short due to the kits having some missing parts, and he still hasn't made a follow-up video for some reason. I sure hope he's doing okay.
Shame.
So I thought I would help to motivate him by making my very own modular city board using these parts before he has a chance to finish his.
That might not be enough. Well, I finally got the missing pegs from these kits. Such a small but important item that was completely required to construct these sets with any sort of efficiency. Unfortunately, I couldn't just jump straight into the really fun construction process that I'd been waiting 2 months to do. I first had to spend another full day snipping and prepping pieces. The pegs themselves each needed to be snipped individually from their rails, and this took a very, very long time. But that's not all. Every single wall section, of which I had hundreds, they each needed to have 2 to 3 pieces glued together. They all had 1/2 of those pillars that needed to be attached and 1 or 2 tiny little peg clip pieces that, act as the receiver for the pegs. This was another very grueling and tedious task, much like what I experienced on the first episode in the series. But after a full day of this, I did manage to get through it so that I could actually start building the next day. And when I did the first episode in the series, a lot of viewers were really confused or surprised by the fact that I snipped all the pieces from all 12 sets instead of just building them one at a time. And that approach would work if these were in fact individual sets to make 12 individual things, but they're not. They're modular, like Lego. They're meant to be mixed. The reason I wanted so many sets on hand and ready to go is so that I could use them to construct a bunch of permanent buildings and ruins of different shapes and sizes. Some of these would be large, some of them small, and the idea is that I could stack them for really high elevations while keeping things manageable for shelf storage. So that's why I have each piece type from all the sets put into their own boxes so I could just grab the exact part or piece that I needed at any given time. I really had no plan here though, and that's partially why this project was so appealing for me. I really wanted to just be like a kid again, playing with Lego or Kinects. Or for you really old timers, Lincoln Logs. A serious wargamer might consider the best way to construct these in regards to rules and mechanics, but I'm not that guy. I'm just a really casual player, and I just want a ton of really cool looking things on the table to make this really epic city, so I'm just going for it. My lack of planning with the kits themselves though did make me realize very quickly that these sets weren't quite as modular as I thought. The fact that each wall had what I'd call a male and a female end, or like a pillar side and a no pillar side, meant that squares had to be made in a loop. You had to go male, female, male, female, male, female until it connected back to itself. You couldn't just make 2 full squares and then connect a wall section between them. And since there's no male to male or non-columned wall pieces, you have to be really careful not to create situations where you need one of those to finish things off. And I learned this the hard way on my first piece because I went straight into gluing, but I quickly started to learn and figure out how these sets wanted to be used in order to achieve what I wanted just by using a little bit more foresight. One thing about these sets is that they are designed to be used as smaller modular ruins, not giant buildings like I'm trying to do here. And they don't have proper floor pieces as part of their design. What they do have are these little clip-on platforms that you can use with these bracket pieces. But even on my first building, that I started to use these not as intended by gluing them together to create kind of like a solid floor walkway on top of the wall. It's not ideal, but it worked well enough on this first one. With my first building complete, I started to better understand how the sets work and don't work, and was able to construct building sections that were a little bit more suited to the style of the form factor of these kits. The variety of patterns on the wall sections and the fact that they were often different on each side made it fairly easy to make buildings that were pretty varied and looked a little bit more realistic in their patterns. But the issue of not having those wall sections that didn't have a pillar on either side made it really difficult to do things like add structural interior walls once the perimeter was already together. I did notice that the stretch goals came with girder pieces that kind of did exactly this. It's just what I needed. Unfortunately, there was only one per set, and I only had several of these stretch goal sets, which meant that I only had 6 or 7 of these pieces and had to use them really sparingly. Had the core sets come with a bunch of these pieces, as well as ones that were half the length, I think that would have made these sets just about perfect. Again though, I'm really pushing these sets to do something a lot bigger and more epic in scale than they're really designed to do, so I expected them to have some limitations that I would need to work around. One of the things I needed to work around was the floors. I needed a way to do large floor sections, and this simply is not possible with the included balcony pieces. I noticed though that if I were to use the clips from those little balconies, that I could slide in a piece of medium weight chipboard later and it fit perfectly. Simply having a plan of how those floors would be supported, what the substrate would be, is all that really matters at this stage. With several large building sections complete, I was really happy to see this city start to take shape. My idea to have ruins that were 3 or 4 levels high each so that they'd fit on shelves seemed to be working pretty well in terms of being able to stack them later to make tall buildings. Having really tall buildings isn't the most practical thing for gaming, but the idea of having a table full of them is just so damn cool and exciting for me, and something that I've wanted to have and do since I got into this hobby. I realized on one of the last buildings that I was working on that day that if I wanted a full lower floor section, these pieces of square plastic card that I already had on hand would work perfectly at this particular size. I glued one of those pieces to the base, and this also helped to make sure the frame was nice and square. I could then continue the higher sections on top of this as the plastic card was so thin that it didn't really screw things up. And having this plastic card in place would give me a really great surface to decorate later, once I actually figure out how I'm gonna decorate all the floors. Well, this is where I got after another 3 days working on this project. And I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about it. It's not nearly where I thought it would be after another couple days working on it. I thought I would get through all of the main kind of core structures and, main pieces. Realistically, I think I've gotten through like maybe 70% of the main pieces. So I still have a fair bit that I can kind of roughly construct. And yeah, but it's a lot. Like even this right now is packed together. You could easily spread this out to have a really nice full like 4x8 table. But I want to go all out. I would have gotten through a lot more of it, but in the 3 days that I had to work on this week, the first day was still spent prepping and snipping and gluing little pieces. The second day was a full build day. I could dedicate the whole day to that, but I was still kind of learning the system. So it was a little bit slow and I made some mistakes. The third day, when I finally had everything ready and I knew what I was doing and I was really rocking and rolling, my day got cut short because I definitely 100% poisoned myself with glue fumes. When you use like a ridiculous amount of, when you use a ridiculous amount of super glue and plastic cement and accelerator, creates a lot of nasty fumes. Now, normally I'm an advocate for safety. I would normally have my window wide open and my fan pulling in fresh air, circulating the room. But it's -43 outside right now. Like it's really cold, so that would freeze the room out very fast, and the window's frozen shut. So I got a little bit ballsy and was so into this, I just did it anyway. It was a bad idea. After about 4 hours, I got really lightheaded, started feeling really nauseous, started making mistakes. I had to cut the day short and go to bed and drink lots of water and get fresh air and sleep it off for like 12 hours. Be careful with super glue. It's no joke, but you probably aren't gonna be using like 40 things of super glue in one day. Now, if you're wondering why I use so much super glue instead of plastic cement on these kits, it's because a lot of these pieces actually don't connect super tight. There's some play in them, especially the ones that only have one peg. Super glue was necessary to get them locked in really quickly so I could keep going, and I used the plastic cement to kind of re-secure certain areas once I had things in place. I'm gonna finish constructing the rest of these base kind of core buildings just in casual time, off camera, just in the evenings until I get everything to this point. And then once I do that, I'll make another video probably next month where I go in and start doing all the embellishments. Because the thing is, there's actually thousands of little cool pieces in these sets to finish off the tops of the pipes and all the little peg holes. There's little adornments you can put in them. So I'm gonna finish that off, but keeping them stackable. I'm gonna have to work on the floor sections, figure out what I'm gonna do for that. That's gonna be a fairly big task. And then there's gonna be painting, and then there's gonna be
All the weathering effects, I want to do some cool stuff like, you know, a lot of weathering powders, and I want to try oil washes on these for the first time, and I want to have like toxic goo dripping out everywhere. I got big plans for this, and we're going to keep trucking through it. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I'll probably do a video on this once a month now. That's what I've scheduled out for myself. And yeah, man, like Plague City is starting to be a real place. And hopefully, once the real plague has kind of settled down, I can actually use this to play some games. I hope you guys enjoyed the second part of this series. If you did, hit the like button. Give me a comment in the comment section below. Share it with your friends and your favorite hobby groups. Help get this video get some traction. If you want to pick up some stuff for your own hobby needs and you want to support me and the channel in the process, check out blackmagiccraft.ca. There I have my essential equipment page where I list and show everything that I use regularly. You get the right stuff, you help fund videos like this. It's a win-win for everybody. It costs you nothing extra. But if you do want to spend a little bit extra to help out me and this channel, best way you can do that is by supporting the channel on Patreon. I'd love to have you as the newest member of the Blackmagic Craft Fellowship. That support is crucial to keeping this channel going strong and developing and getting better and bigger. So I'd love to see you there. That's it for this one, guys. Cheers. Have a great weekend. I know I will.